Hello, my friends. Tonight, I want to tell you a story. A story that drifts between a gothic fairy tale and a haunting legend. A story about a boy who dared to look into a mirror at midnight and discovered that sometimes your reflection has a life of its own. The tale is called The Child in the Mirror. So dim your lights, get comfortable, and listen closely, because what you're about to hear might just follow you the next time you pass by a mirror in the dark. The village was asleep under a swollen moon. The air moved like whispers across the thatched roofs. Windows were dark, doors locked, and silence pressed down like a heavy quilt. But in one small cottage, a single candle burned. Its flame flickered inside a bathroom, trembling as though it was afraid. A boy stood before the mirror. He wasn't old, just barely past the age when dreams feel more real than mornings. He had read about a forbidden ritual. One candle. One nearly dark room. Look into the mirror without laughing, without blinking too long, until your reflection decides what happens next. At first, nothing moved. Then, he tilted his head left. But in the glass, the reflection did not follow. He raised a hand. The hand inside the mirror stayed still. He blinked. The face in the glass did not. Then, the reflection smiled. A smile like a crack spreading across stone. The air turned cold. The candle shrank into itself as if it wanted to hide. And then, fingers, pale as paper, slid out of the mirror. They wrapped around the boy's wrist, ice cold, strong as iron. He tried to scream, but the scream had been stolen. The mirror pulled. The world tore like fabric. And suddenly, everything turned to ink. When he woke, his wrist burned with the mark of a bruise, and his tongue tasted of silver. The candle was dead. And in the mirror, his reflection lingered. But it wasn't him. The eyes were too steady, the smile too patient. It looked like him, but from the inside out, wrong. The boy fled, hiding under his bed, but footsteps echoed in the hallway. The door creaked. Boots stepped inside, and then a voice, low and rough, said, "There you are. We've been searching for you for 200 years." The man was not tall, but he was whole, carved by time and distance. His uniform was faded, scarred like his face. A long silver scar ran from his ear to his jaw. He pulled the boy gently from under the bed. "They hid you," he said, "because stories eat their children." The boy stammered, "I'm not a story." But the soldier shook his head. "You were born into one, and the Mirror King has been waiting. You are the last unbound child of your family. If he claims you, his tally is complete. The world will grow thin." "And my parents?" the boy asked. "Taken. To the border of glass. They bought you 12 years of freedom with their silence." The soldier carried him through the house, past picture frames where the reflections smiled too widely, past mirrors that whispered for him to come closer. Outside, the moon washed the road in white. The soldier's car was black and ancient, smelling of oil and thunder. As they drove away, the road stretched too long. The church steeple leaned, then corrected itself, and hedges sighed as if they had forgotten the boy. "What's your name?" the boy asked. "I've been called many names," the soldier replied, hands tight on the wheel. "You may call me Rook." "Like the chess piece?" Rook's mouth twitched into something close to a smile. "Like the bird that keeps watch at the gallows?" Elsewhere, by an old lake where swans avoided the moon, a woman sat clutching a photograph. Grief had torn her hair ragged. She had once been a wife, a mother, laughter in a small house. Now she was silence in a larger one. The lake reflected what wasn't there, and what she wanted most wasn't there. She had searched for answers, Priests gave her warm words that cooled too quickly. A village wise woman had given her a jar of salt and a thread spun from hair, whispering, "Sew the reflection shut." It didn't work, so she went deeper. Markets of shadow, places where voices were sold by weight. She bought 2 deaths, one to fall before her, one to come behind. That night, when the assassin came for her, he fell instead, killed by the deal she had made. And then another man appeared from the birches, gun in hand, sorrow in his eyes. "Do you still want this?" he asked. "I want what the water wants," she whispered, the face it swallowed. For a moment, the lake shimmered, and in its black surface, a boy's pale face rose, just long enough to remind her of her wound. The gunman lowered his weapon. "I don't kill mothers," he said, and vanished into the trees. Alone, the woman wept without sound. And then, for just a moment, the lake thinned. She saw it, the border of glass, a place where water becomes mirror and mirror becomes door. Something waited beyond, patient as teeth. "Wait for me," she begged, "or forgive me if I cannot find the path." Rook drove until the road surrendered. They arrived at a stone house with a sagging roof, the Library of Folks. Inside, shelves bent under the weight of books that had been rewritten by time. Wrong maps that told truer stories than right ones. Almanacs that predicted yesterday perfectly. All the mirrors faced the wall. The librarian was there, a woman who seemed sometimes 30, sometimes 80, sometimes as old as books themselves. She looked at Rook with nostalgia and disapproval. "You bring the last mirror child here?" she murmured. "He was already burning," Rook answered. The librarian touched the boy's bruised wrist. "The king will smell you now. The tally is almost complete." "Who is the Mirror King?" the boy asked. The librarian pulled down a book bound in pale leather. She read, "Once there was a kingdom without knights. The sun never set. Children grew old without shadows. A prince, clever and tired, made a mirror from a frozen tear of the sky. He held it up to the day and begged it for mystery. The tear drank the sun. Night slipped in. The mirror demanded payment. One child of each generation to keep the dark sweet. The prince became a king, then a story, and the king forgot he had ever been a man. The boy swallowed. How do we stop him? Remind him of what he forgot, the librarian said. Remind him he was human. Or break the mirror whole and let the shard cut the world to threads. And my parents? They are in the gallery of kept promises, she said softly. That is what the king calls his prison. Rook stood straighter. Then we'll need a guide. The librarian's gaze drifted to a tall mirror, framed in black wood, its surface fogged like winter glass. Mirrors prefer to be entered, not unlocked. Rook, she whispered, you may have to spend another century. He bowed like a knight who already knew he was in a tragedy. I have a few left. They stepped through the glass. It felt like walking into a held breath. The corridor stretched forever. Floors glittered like silver dust. Portraits lined the walls, paintings of children from centuries past. But the children were gone. Only empty chairs, small hats left behind. The boy read a few names. His chest tightened. They were his family names, the ones adults never spoke about. Do not stop if you hear your own name, the librarian warned. The mirror wants us to lean toward ourselves. They reached a great hall. Statues lined the walls, their eyes filled with rolling silver coins. At the far end sat a throne made from impossible things, a window, a cradle, book spines, and in it, the Mirror King. His robe shifted colours endlessly. His face was a pale mask, beneath which the faintest memory of a man stirred. "Welcome," the king said. His voice echoed like a wedding ring falling into a well. "At last, my last." "How tidy. The ritual requires a story," the king said. "Tell me something with teeth." Rook bowed. "Once, there was a soldier born on a border. He fought in wars that never agreed on their dates. In the last war, he chased men across an ice river. On the far bank, he found a mirror set into the ground like a fallen moon. He looked. He loved what he saw, not himself, but the world held still. He stepped through. The mirror closed. He learned what a century feels like when it belongs only to you." The king clapped once. "Pretty. I accept your devotion as payment for the child. No." Rook's eyes burned. "I brought him to speak the truth to the first lie." The king tilted his head. "What lie?" "That you were only ever a king." Behind the throne, a mirror bloomed with frost, then cleared, showing a young man under endless daylight, holding a shard of sky, astonished by his own creation. The boy's voice trembled, but he spoke. "You were human. You promised it would only be one child, and then you wanted more." The king's hand twitched. For a moment, the man inside the mask showed through. "What would you have me do?" he asked. It was not the voice of a king, but of a man afraid. "Let them go," the boy said. "All the children." "My parents. Stop counting us like coins," the librarian's voice was steady. "Stories eat their children only when they forget they were children first." The doors opened. Footsteps poured out. The rush of children finally freed. Some wore old-fashioned clothes. Some shimmered like faded photographs. And then, his parents. The boy ran. No, he flew. His mother's hands shook in his hair. His father's broken laugh still held water like a cracked cup. The king watched. The hunger in his robe flickered and faded. Coins rolled from the statue's eyes, clinking against the floor. "To keep me from hunger," the king said quietly, "I will need a warden who remembers both sides of the glass." Rook stepped forward. "I'll serve. For as long as it takes to teach you mercy." At dawn, the woman by the lake saw the water shimmer. A bridge of pale light stretched across. She stepped onto it, step after trembling step. The wind begged her to turn back. The lake whispered, "Sleep. Forget." But she remembered what mothers are, bridges built from vows. At the far side stood Rook, older, patient. Behind him, her son. They embraced, and the world healed, if only for a moment. The village learned new habits. Mirrors were turned toward windows, so they reflected the living instead of themselves. Parish bells added one extra chime at noon. Teenagers still dared one another to bring candles into bathrooms at midnight. But now, it was just a toothless rumour. The boy grew older. He mended socks with his mother, learned the small miracles of the ordinary from his father. Sometimes, at dusk, he caught his reflection smiling too patiently. But he had learned not to smile first. The Mirror King, now less king than man, walked his gallery with Rook. When he faltered, Rook told him stories. Stories about choosing not to shoot. "Will you ever be a man again?" Rook once asked. "Ask me when no one fears midnight," the king replied. Years folded like maps. The boy became a young man, then an ordinary man. And ordinary, he learned, is the greatest kind of miracle. He worked at the Library of Faults. He dusted atlases of countries that never were. He made tea that tasted of patience. And when he passed mirrors, he remembered, mirrors will always want, but we can choose to want better. Later, pinned to the village notice board, were rules written in a child's hand. If you must look in a mirror at midnight, do not smile first. If your reflection forgets its manners, let it be wrong by itself. Candles are for birthdays and storms, not for feeding guests you cannot feed. If water calls your feet, name, wave politely, and then go inside to share tea with someone who says your name with love. And if you see a soldier on a bridge of light, offer him a chair. He has been standing for a very long time. Some tales don't end. They learn how to continue without harm. So if your house is ever too quiet and your mirror too bright, remember the old soldier's advice. Choose mornings. And if the child in the mirror smiles, look carefully. It may just be your own face practicing the courage to turn away. And that is the story of the child in the mirror. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If you enjoyed this tale, share it with someone you'd like to scare or comfort tonight. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you've ever looked into a mirror at midnight and what you saw staring back. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, not every reflection belongs to you.